Hello and good day. My name is Damien Ching and I'm here to present my research proposal about staff turnover or employee turnover at the Sports Bar X. First, let us see what staff turnover really is. Employee turnover or staff turnover is the percentage of employees who leave an organization or are replaced by another employee. There's two types of staff turnovers. First, we got voluntary staff turnover. Voluntary staff turnover is when a capable employee leaves work for elsewhere. Then we've got involuntary staff turnover. Involuntary staff turnover is when an employee is let go or fired. Let me now give you a brief description or the company background of Sports Bar X. Sports Bar X is an individually owned business located in the heart of Kingswood in New South Wales. This sports bar consists of two bar sections and a bistro, which serves American-styled breakfast and snacks throughout the day. The sports bar offers great entertainment every day and night. Every sporting event taking place is shown at the pub in its vast amount of big screens, from late night international soccer events to mid-afternoon UFC and boxing. Sports Bar X also offers gaming facilities such as Keno, Tab, and gaming machines. To this next slide, I have added 4 photographs taken from within the Sports Bar X to show the facilities offered to the patrons and the internal setup of the bar. In this next slide, let's shift our focus to the problems in the industry or the problem space in this presentation. According to the Food and Beverage Services Industry Report of 2017 done by Bank West, pubs, taverns and bars employ more than 97,500 workers. Of it, the largest proportion of the workforce is in New South Wales. Around 35,500 workers are based. However, according to a study published by the Griffith University in Queensland, the hotel and hospitality industry lose about half of its staff each year. Staff earnings in food and beverage services sector is also below average. Across the industry, food and beverage service workers take home an average of $842 compared to the average of $1,230 for all occupants in Australia. However, the average drops further for bar attendants to $515 per week on average. Then, as highlighted in the Eating Out in Australia 2017 report, the food and beverage industry's greatest workforce challenge is the recruitment and retention of quality candidates. The recent reduction of Sunday and public holiday penalty rates by the Fair Work Commission has further contributed to the disadvantage of hospitality workers. While moving on to this next slide, I have noticed some concerns or reasons why Sports Bar X has a high staff turnover percentage. So within the last 14 months, 34 staff members from the X Sports Bar and Bistro have left or been asked to leave by the management, which clearly indicates a large staff turnover issue at the X Sports Bar and Bistro and the industry as a whole. So I've also found out that the majority of the staff are part-time or casual staff who are on student visas, which make them just limited to 20 hours a week. So as a result of minimum hours and unfriendly working hours, which the industry requires, many staff members in the hospitality industry look at this industry just as a stepping stone for their careers or till they settle down here in Australia, um, until they move on to other types of occupations. So, furthermore, I've also noticed poor management skills by pub owners and managers who have led to the dissatisfaction of staff members. The requirement to work long hours with lack of proper training leads to quick laying off and firing of employees in the at the pub and bar industry. In this next slide of my presentation, let's look at the literature that I've chosen as my findings and as my references during my research. First, according to Bradmere and Bologlu, employee satisfaction will influence the service quality and result in customer satisfaction and loyalty. Within their research, they found out that most devastating than the loss of an employee was the loss of productivity among managers, supervisors, and co-workers. The participants said that co-workers lost 20% of their productivity for up to 16 days when a colleague left. Then we move on to Ken Cross and Kerry, who stated in Australia, casual employees in the hospitality industry has a higher turnover rate than average. The industry has the highest rates of casual employment in any industry in Australia, with 59% of its employees being regarded as casual. But casual employment can contribute up to as much as 70% of the workforce in some hospitality establishments. Third, we got Conrad Lashley. Lashley said that labor turnover imposes costs on employees in 4 areas, such as living costs, replacement costs, transition costs, and indirect costs. So these wide variations in the incidence of staff turnover at all levels does question the somewhat fatalistic declaration of some managers that high staff turnover is just the way things are in the industry. If that were the case, the levels of staff turnover would be high across all firms with little variation. It does not explain why one pub can have staff turnover at approximately 12%, whilst another pub with a similar number of employees can have turnover of nearly 700%. So moving on to this next slide, we talk about the aim of my research. So the aim of this research study is to explore and investigate the reason for high staff turnover at Sports Bar X and Bistro within the past year, and then how effective measures can be introduced to mitigate high staff turnover. Within this next slide, I have decided to include the 2 main research questions in my whole research. They are, what are the causes of staff turnover at Sports Bar X and Bistro? So we're going to look into what sort of what are the causes for staff, the high levels of staff turnover, and what practices and measures that the venue can develop and implement to retain its staff. This next slide indicates my research design, how and which ways I'm going to do my research. So I'm going to use a qualitative method together with a mixed method approach. To collect data, I will be collecting primary data. Data will be collected through in-depth structural interviews with the employees and selected management, as well as an analysis of the number of staff that have left within the last year. And during the analysis step would be to integrate qualitative material and theory collected through previous research to provide a convincing solution. In this next slide, I present my survey or my research design, or how I would gather my information through a structured survey from employees past who have left, who were asked to leave or who left the Sports Bar X. So with in this design, we would use gender, age, education background, and position. That would be the first section of the questionnaire. And then the second part of my questionnaire would be work relationships, how their relationships with their managers or their co-workers were while they were at work. Then we've got to look at the problems and needs, and their goals and values, whether their goals and values were the same as the goals and values of the Sports Bar X or the company. That would be the second section of my survey. To the third section of my survey, be looking at meaning and purpose, why they wanted to work, what was the purpose of them working, and also their purpose of leaving, whether they wanted to find a better job, or whether they wanted to stay in the same industry. So I would be surveying the reasons, to be exact. What were their reasons to leave, and the factors that influenced them to leave the Sports Bar X, and or if they would, once they left, whether they're in the same industry or they left the Sports Bar X completely to change to a new industry, or they just wanted to move to a different venue. That would be my third part in my survey. In this next slide, I talk about the ethical consideration, because during any research there is ethical values that need to be practiced. 1. Ensuring quality and integrity of this research. I will seek informed consent. I will respect the confidentiality and anonymity of the research respondents. Will ensure that participants will participate in the study voluntarily. Will avoid harm to all participants, and I will show that my research is independent and partial. And in final, to summarize the research, first, this research will examine factors causing the high staff turnover or high employee turnover rate at the Sports Bar X. Second, I look to explore the human resource management strategy which could lead to increased employment satisfaction and employee retention. Next, I looked forward to providing recommendations and solutions based on my findings through my research on primary and secondary data collected. Thank you very much for your attention, for listening to my presentation, and I look forward to completing my research in due course. Thank you very much.